The Nation Network studios built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center in beautiful downtown Vancouver. Turn game night into game weekend. Book your stay here at the Wall Center. Enjoy the exclusive Sekeres and Price rate, 604-331-1000. Mention Sekeres and Price. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. All our socials as usual here at 11:30. From here on in, folks, we are back to normal. Well, we aren't back to normal. The show is back to normal. 11:30 a.m., of course. And that is Irfaan Gaffar sitting in for the vacation Matt Sekeres, who is back tomorrow. Irf, welcome. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
That was a crazy weekend, by the way. There's a lot going on. We were not left wanting for sporting endeavors to watch on television.
No, it was great. I mean, right through, even if you watched the college football like I do as well, there's a lot of stuff going on. Happy to be here. Happy to be filling in for Matt. Also, did he go to the game at Soldier Field?
I think he did.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, a couple of games there. Our poll question today: what should be the maximum length of a Brock Boeser contract extension with the Canucks? 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or the maximum 7/8 years. The Canucks can go to 8. The rest of the league can go to 7, of course. Let us know what you think. It's available on Twitter, YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you can cast your vote there as well. Where are you going here, Irf? What's your thought? Where should the Canucks be thinking? And from a fan's perspective, what should they be wanting the Canucks to do in terms of the term here?
Well, I'll answer this in two parts. Let's start from probably the fans' perspective. I think a lot of the fans are going to say under 7 and 8 years. I think that's what's probably going to happen on the poll when you look at the results a little bit later. Look, I think a 5-year, 6-year deal is probably fair. I think if you're Brock, you want the term of 7 to 8 years. I don't think that there has been much or at all talk between the two sides this summer. I mean, look, Brock, was dealing with the blood clotting issues. We know that, he's okay now, and obviously he's been cleared for contact and can play. So that's number one, that he's healthy. But yeah, no talking. And I think he's going to let his play do the talking coming off a 40-goal season, right? He's going to ride JT Miller's coattails, and whoever that winger ends up being, play a lot of meaningful minutes for the Vancouver Canucks this season. And if he gets up to 30 again, I mean, Brock, it's going to be at least $50 million. Right, on a long-term deal. Are the Canucks willing to do that? Is there going to be enough money for the Canucks to be able to do that? Are they going to want to go and try and find another top 4 defenseman with some money at some point down the road here? So there's a lot of interesting variables that are going to come into play. But if it's a long-term deal, the number is going to start with an 8. And it's going to be in the $50 million range probably. But if it's shorter term, then it's going to get interesting.
If you're really selfish as the Canucks or fans that are discerning, I mean, offer him a 2-year deal. Like, a 2-year deal gets the best 3 years out of Brock Boeser, and then you can reevaluate at that point. And if you're Brock Boeser, if you take a 2-year deal, you get another good contract at the age of 30 or 31. We're seeing it. Like 30, 31-year-old free agents are still signing for big money. If he can put together 3 good years with a contending kind of team, he can sign another big money deal in a new world order of salary cap. Because at the end of those 3 years, the salary cap is going to be at least $100 million.
I agree, but I still think that there's some sort of certain uncertainty when it comes to that. Like, if a team's putting a certain amount of money in front of you, you're going to have to look at it and think about it and be like, oh, am I really going to bet on myself, knowing my history, knowing the injury history that I have? Just Brock Boeser specifically, right? The blood clots and all of that. And then obviously him not being able to,
81 games last year. So it's as good as he's ever had it, 81 games.
But before that, he hasn't really been able to stay healthy, all sorts of injury issues. So it's one to think about. But I think if you're the Vancouver Canucks, you want him to have a great season, obviously, to help your team win. And Brock Boeser wants to do that. But it's going to come at a cost if you want to sign him to a long-term extension.
Realistically, I think the Canucks are probably going to have to give him years. So
100%.
I'm thinking it's going to be in the range of 6. I throw the 2 out there because it's the selfish way to have your cake and eat it too. Doubtful that it's going to be 2. It's probably going to be 6.
It's not like he's not a PK Subban where you can do that, or an Austin Matthews where you can sign these shorter term deals, and that it comes that like Matthews knows he's going to score 65 goals a year and be that guy. Is Brock really going to bet on himself and be able to do that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that that's the case.
Now we are talking Boeser contract because he's our top story, presented by Yellow Dog and Neighborhood Brewing. Brock Boeser speaks today at the Jake Milford Golf Tournament. And yes, as we hear from him straight away, he did speak about the contract.
Just let it play out. And, obviously coming off a blood clot, I think I got a lot to prove, just, kind of dealing with that little setback. So, I'm just focused on having a great camp again like I did last year and trying to, have a fast start to the season again.
And very little update. There's not much to update here. So he's just going to play some hockey and hope that it takes care of itself. If you're a betting man here, and I know you are you like, when's the time frame here? Does it get done before Christmas? Is it Christmas to the end of the season, or is it after the season is done before July 1st?
I think it's Christmas to the end
of the season.
And then they take a real hard look at it during that break when the Four Nations is happening. Right. It just, I think it all depends.
Full 2 weeks off. It's a good time to get that kind of business done.
And especially if he's not on the team, or if he is on Team USA, then maybe it's a different story. But I think one of these things, when you look at it, it all depends on the start, right? They're not going to, who knows, they might talk in the next couple of weeks, and the Canucks could go low and offer him a $50 million, $48 million, $49 million deal, right? I don't think that Brock's camp is going to have that conversation. I think that they're in a very good position. I mean, he's a guy that scored 40 goals last year, and we talked about it so much and how great it was. And everyone in this city and in this market and follows Vancouver Canucks knows Brock's story, knows what he's been through, and, obviously a lot. I just think for the Vancouver Canucks, I mean, you have to really think about this. And for Brock, from Brock's point of view, I know he loves being here, and he wants to remain a Vancouver Canuck, but the dollars have to make sense, right? And I think that when you look at it, he's a guy that's going to get paid. If it's not here, it's going to be somewhere. Someone will pay for those services, and it's probably going to start with an 8. And are the Canucks willing to do that? I think that's the big question.
So there's injuries, which he has certainly had in years gone by, but there's also just his general health with the blood clot issues that you heard him discuss there. Let's hear him go a little bit more in depth, and then we'll come back to it after we've heard from him. Here's Brock Boeser and his health.
I was on blood thinners for a few months during the summer, which I could still skate and stuff, but I had to be careful just contact wise. But I've been off of them for a little bit now, and I've gotten to start doing contact towards the end of summer. And it's obviously something that we look back on, and it was a tough scenario, but I'm just happy that I can move forward and really focus on this season.
Great that he's off them now. I'm going to guess it's not the last time that he's on them. As he gets older, perhaps if he suffers another injury of some sort, maybe there's a need for him to go back onto blood thinners. But how much do you think that's rattling around the back of the head of, first of all, the team in terms of contract negotiations? That adds a different factor to it. Now, again, cap-wise and dollars-wise, it's all taken care of. God forbid something bad should happen to Brock Boeser. LTIR for the cap, insurance for the money. But ultimately, you as a team want to invest in guys that you're pretty sure can help you down the road. Do you think that factors in at all?
Yeah, I do. I think that you have to take everything into consideration, right? And I think from the Canucks perspective, like, they're going to want to see what he can do, what he can go out there and do. Is he going to be hesitant out there? Is he going to be a guy that, Brock changed his game a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Looked at his power play goals, 16 power play goals, like this year or in this past season. How many of them were from right tight end, like banging back of the crease or side of the crease, and those crash and get rebounds and type of goals, right? Obviously, we saw with his shot he did score a few, but he completely reinvented his game a little bit. So they're going to have to wait and see what type of player he is. And I think for Brock, he's going to go into camp and he's going to want to play in these preseason games. I think for when you look at it from his perspective, I think for him, I'd want to get into more games to get the feel of being hit, to see how your body reacts and all of that. I think you'll see him play in a little bit more preseason games as we get ready for the regular season.
Yeah, getting pulverized, getting a stick into the lower back, all that stuff presents a little bit of a risk in terms of healing for him. It'll be interesting. Now, he talked about flying too. He talked about, and people with blood clotting issues do have a bit of a difficult time with blood clotting on flights. And he talked about how they're going to take care of that in terms of compression wear, or is it Normatec? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, there's a couple different brands out there.
Like an inflatable, almost like a blood pressure monitor cuff that just goes everywhere around whatever body part you need it to. So there is some technology that they can use instead of blood thinners that can help to minimize the risk for Brock Boeser. But all of a sudden, he's got another thing to think about in his career that I'm sure he really didn't want to have to think about. Now, of course, we all remember the fact that he wasn't available for Game 7 for the Vancouver Canucks. How might that have changed the fortunes? It was a close enough game that I think you're allowed to go down that road in your mind and think that he might have been able to make a difference. He did sort of mention that, but he also just mentioned the fact that they got to Game 7, that they were a good team this year, and there's a lot of demands now on them going forward. Here's Brock Boeser on these expectations.
Yeah, I think it's definitely different, but I think it's a good thing to have. We had such a successful year last year, and I think we all feel within the organization we could have won that Game 7. We could have been moving on. So I think it should just make you that much more hungrier. Adding those new guys, I think that raises the excitement, and obviously it always comes with pressure, but I think that's a good thing. And I think we're gonna have a great year this year.
Brock Boeser, our top story. Grab your tickets for Cask and Keg and Oliver during Wine Capital Weekend. That's coming up next Saturday. Not this Saturday, next. That's right in the middle of training camp. Saturday, September the 21st. Get your YD Bevco fix. Samples from Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and lots of other great breweries as well. There is a new bar here for this team.
Yes. Expectations are high, right? I think that when you look at it, they're better. I mean, on paper, I think the only question mark you really have is goaltending as we walk into this season, to be completely honest. They're not going to, this team is not going to have to score 2 goals and hope that their goaltender is going to bail them out every night. They should be able to beat teams, to go out there and handle their business and do that. One more thing on Brock Boeser. I just want to get back to it a little bit. Deferred salary would be something interesting to keep. Like, I don't say keep an eye on, but Seth Jarvis did it. If it's a big contract and things like that, you defer all your payments to the end of it. I wonder, not something that he would do, but because of the Seth Jarvis contract, someone actually messaged me and said it would be interesting to see if that were happen a lot more now in the NHL with these big contracts, with guys pushing their signing bonus money to get the cap down to way near the end, and once the contract expires. Could be interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, it is. I mean, creativity.
You got to do stuff, right?
Yeah.
You have to.
And you see other teams around the NHL, of course, manipulating things as much as they can. Yeah. And the NHL, while clamping down on Luongo, has really not clamped down on anybody else for doing anything else. So It seems to be the Wild West in some regards. How do you think this team performs with these new expectations? Do you think being a surprise team last year is a different weight than the weight of being a 100? We haven't asked this question just yet here, and I'm curious to see what fans are going to say. We haven't asked the poll about where the fans think they can get to this year, over under 109. I'm curious about that. We will ask at some point here. But, the players know 109, that's a really good year.
It's an insane year for a team that really didn't have any expectations.
Like 109 points is a fantastic year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the safe bet is that they're going to be under that. That's just the safe bet. Or asking them to be a 110 or more is kind of crazy. Like, that's Sedin era level of greatness. 5
points better than the Oilers last season, and the Oilers were in the Stanley Cup final, right?
Like, and I don't think we look at this roster and say this is like 2010.
No, I don't think so. I think there's definitely some question marks on this roster. I think after defenseman, maybe number 3 to 6, there's some question marks there. The biggest one's the goaltending, right? We can talk all we want about the forwards and what they did, and Jake DeBrusk and Danton Heinen and Kiefer Sherwood and Daniel Sprong and Elias Paterson getting his deal and guys coming back. Quinn Hughes winning the Norris, 92-point defenseman, but the defenseman. Like, I think that's one of the things that we're going to have to look at. If can Carson Soucy stay healthy all season? How are Derek Forbort going to play? How's Vinny Desharnais going to be, as a sixth defenseman? We all know that the Canucks have the tallest defenseman, in the National Hockey League, but are they able to move the puck? Can they get the puck out of their own end? Can they do things? Philip Hronek's new extension obviously is kicking in as well. Is he going to be a guy that, had a million points or a lot of points, before the All-Star break and then kind of tailed off quite a bit after that. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team. I think expectations, though, from within are high. 109, probably not going to be attainable this season. But if you are playing your best hockey in March and April and you're near the top of that Pacific Division, the teams to beat are the Edmonton Oilers. Like, that is the team to beat. Right? I don't think the LA Kings are going to be that much better. The Vegas Golden Knights, okay, they're going to be the Vegas Golden Knights. But beyond that, the Flames, the Kraken, the Ducks, and the Sharks, like the Canucks are better than those teams in their division.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, you look in the Western Conference, Dallas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Nashville. Nashville obviously got a lot better. But then beyond that, the Canucks are definitely in the Western Conference still in the top 3 or 4 teams, I would say.
And you're still asking for guys to have career years again.
Absolute career years. 40 goals, 92 points from Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
Like JT Miller, 37 goals.
Now, Jake DeBrusk was at the golf tournament today saying, getting back to 25 to 30 goals is his goal. And he thinks he could score more if everything slots in. So, all these forwards that they've brought in have been brought in with potential. Lowercase p or capital P, we don't know, but there is the potential for these guys to outperform where their career norms have been. Kiefer Sherwood's probably going to be given more leash than he's ever been given offensively. Same thing with Heinen. Can they actually seize that brass ring and take advantage? It's proof is going to be in the pudding here as the season gets going. And they're going to need at least a couple of these guys to perform above expectations. And what are the chances that Nils Höglander backs up his year? I mean, still question marks here. They've done well on paper to ensure themselves a little bit because there's just more volume of wingers. But somebody's going to actually have to step up and perform.
Well, that's the thing. That's why it's fun to have these conversations now, because it's all about what's on paper for the next few weeks. And then once Rick Tocchet actually gets a hold of his team in training camp and into preseason games, and even then, we can still look at it. We're going to be sitting here in mid-October, and even early November having these debates. But like I've said before, one of the sticking points of the season where you kind of know where you are as an NHL team is right around American Thanksgiving. That's like the first point for me. And then you look at the All-Star break, or I guess now the Four Nations Cup break, and then you kind of figure out where you are, and then obviously the trade deadline. The Canucks were an insanely good team last year at American Thanksgiving. They were like almost 1, 2, and 3 in NHL scoring. I think it was Paterson, JT Miller, and it was Brock Boeser, I believe, that were up there. Was the goals at least. Yeah. They were 1, 2, and 3. So it got to a point where we looked at it and said, okay, this team is on a historic base. Can they do it again? So I'm interested to see what happens. I'm excited for the start just because there's so much promise there. But there's a lot of work that has to be done. And I think that Rick Tocchet is probably the most excited out of everyone once he kind of is able to get a hold of this team.
Quinn Hughes says he was skating with Roman Josi.
I saw that. How fun would that be?
So would you say that Josi's a better defensive player? At least, there's more pedigree defensively?
Probably. Yeah. I think Quinn Hughes would be pissed if you said that and you heard that, but
I just wonder, I don't think Quinn Hughes needs to learn anything offensively from Roman Josi, and Josi can pile up points too, but Hughes is, I think, a better, more offensively gifted player than Roman Josi in terms of creation. He says he picked his brain, Roman Josi's brain. I wonder what he can glean from Roman Josi that he needs to learn.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when you see players of that caliber and they skate together in the summer or wherever they are. So Josi and Hughes, obviously 2 of the best defensemen in the NHL, picking each other's brains. What are Matthews and McDavid learning from each other? You know what I mean? They're 2 of the best players in the game, if not 1 and 2. throw McKinnon in there as well. But like when those guys are skating together, or when Crosby and McKinnon are skating together, like what are they learning from each other? Maybe it's different techniques. Maybe it's different things. Like Roman Yossi's probably asking Quinn how he blows by every defenseman down the half wall. And he's saying, Quinn's like, I'm really good at skating. And Roman's like, I'm pretty good too. But then maybe it's getting the shot to the net, different things. But Quinn did all of that. Like Roman should be getting advice from Quinn. He just won the Norris.
Yeah. When you're that good, a lot of it is not teachable stuff.
That's the thing. But maybe because your IQ is so high and your ability to learn the game and the way that you've played the game,
they probably speak a different language.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it is. It's probably their own. Like there's other defensemen in the National Hockey League that can't have this conversation with those guys.
No, it would just be like a blank stare.
Yeah.
Like, what are you guys even talking about here? I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And you know what? Ultimately, they're so good. They can have cheat sheets. They can have shortcuts that other guys can't take because they're just not good enough to take the shortcuts. But the elite players, they're about efficiencies too, right? And maybe something like that. So we'll see if any of that comes home to roost for Quinn Hughes as he tries to elevate this Canucks season. But the Jake Milford Golf Tournament, a signal that, again, it's coming here, folks. Hockey not too far around the corner. By the way, Friday we wondered if the Canucks were even going to fill that in-house reporter gig. Well, asking you shall receive. They announced over the weekend former PR intern Olivia McDonald, who was in Calgary most recently, I think.
Yeah.
New face of the room taken over from Kate Paterson. So you'll be hearing a lot about Olivia McDonald going forward as the Canucks reporter. We'll hear from some of the guys tomorrow on the show, by the way. We'll let you hear what Quinn Hughes and Jake DeBrusk had to say in its entirety. But I would think for a lot of guys that, not everybody's been on these captain skates. This is a good social moment for the team as well. They get to be around everybody and see everybody and meet everybody. So for those that hadn't been skating regularly here at the end of August, early September, they get to go and swing the clubs and see everybody.
When did they start calling them captain skates? Like, I remember
the last 18 months is the first time I'd heard that.
Yeah, because I remember I started in 2011 back at Sportsnet, and they were like, "Okay, go to the
informal workouts."
They're skating at Britannia or wherever they are. Yeah, captain skates is a thing that kind of came up, but last year it was Quinn Hughes that said, "Everyone get here early. We are skating."
Yes.
So I guess there is something to that as well.
Bringing everybody into the fold. So. Young Stars coming up this weekend, of course, in Penticton, and we're going to be there to chronicle the goings-on of Jonathan Lekramaki and anybody else that needs to be chronicled. Maybe there's somebody that rises to the forefront and declares themselves at Young Stars, and then, of course, it's straight on through for training camp at Penticton as well. So it's going to be a fun couple of weeks here, and you can sort of sense it. The weather turned today. That
I love it.
That humid heat of the weekend that was so odd.
It
seems to be
yesterday.
in the rearview mirror. And we'll see what the Vancouver Canucks and the new players can bring to the forefront. It's gonna be exciting training camp.
Like we're obviously gonna have this conversation. Like right now, Blake, I asked you right now, who are you most interested to see from the Vancouver Canucks this season? Doesn't need to be new player. Like right off the top of your head, the one guy that you're like, okay, I need to see something from this guy.
It's Elias Paterson.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Jake DeBrusk is going to be good enough.
Yep.
Might he score 35? Yeah. Might he score 22? Yeah. But I'm most curious about Elias Paterson.
And does Elias Paterson, whatever he does in the regular season, how much does that matter? How much does that matter at all?
For him, it matters. For him, and I don't mean the counting stat. We've said last year, what did he have? 89 points last year?
82, I believe.
No, I think he was 89.
Okay.
Like that is undeniably a great year. And yet, why does it feel like he underachieved to some degree last year? And it's because of the how.
89.
So I think the how matters for Elias Paterson, no matter what number he gets to, whether it's 85, 95, 102. It's the how, because he's good enough that he's going to get counting stats some way, somehow. But I think if he gets them in a dominant way, or if he's getting second assists or getting fat on the power play, all of that matters. We need to see how Elias Pettersson plays as much as I'm sure hockey pool fans and fans in general want to see a big number under the points column. It's the how for me.
Well, with great power comes great responsibility too. $11.6 million is how much Elias Pettersson is going to be making on an AAV for the next while.
Yeah. There's some pressure there, and how he deals with that, it's going to be very interesting. Speaking of pressure, the World Cup is coming here in 2026. In case you had forgotten. It has been a bit of a roller coaster ride with the Canadian men's national team over the last few years, in case you haven't picked up on that. This rise to prominence, glorious run in qualification to the 2022 World Cup. That's the high. There was a hangover post-World Cup in which they weren't that good.
Mm-hmm.
That was the low. They move on from John Herdman. They bring in Jesse Marsh. That's the high again. And then this legacy scandal kicked off by Bev Priestman and the women's team about drones in the Herdman era takes them to another low, where this group of players and this coaching staff are now once again facing questions about it. So you wonder about a new low, and then they go out and win on U.S. soil for the first time in 60 odd years.
Mm-hmm.
And they do so in dominant fashion, particularly in the first half. That was fun. It was fun to see the girded loins of U.S. fans as they watched Canada dominate them.
Yeah, I haven't been able to say that ever.
The 16th ranked team in the world, and I know FIFA rankings are what they are, but that's where they are. And Canada ran roughshod in that opening half.
Yeah, I mean, credit to Jesse Marsh and what he's been able to do in his very short time as manager of the Canadian men's national team. He's gotten everything out of his players. I mean, the belief of whatever he's selling, they're buying. And I think for them, like, just going and being able to do that to the Americans on U.S. soil, like, that's got to feel good for everybody.
Yeah, just a friendly. Nothing at
doesn't
stake.
matter what it is.
Yeah.
Canada, USA, in anything. Doesn't matter what it is.
And you just don't want that stat of you haven't won there in 65 years to be hanging over them when it does matter in a Nations League game or a Gold Cup game or World Cup qualifying for the next cycle, or in the World Cup. I mean, I can't imagine they are going to cross paths, but it's best just to get that stat killed and over with. And now they can work on getting results. And then remember, they drew them on U.S. soil in qualification for Qatar, but they haven't beat them until Saturday, and that was a lot of fun to watch. They take on Mexico in Dallas coming up tomorrow. And by the way, Sam Adekubi back with the team. He originally was pulled away because of this groin injury. Well, he got in a half an hour with the Whitecaps and looked pretty good. So I'm sure Jesse Marsh saw Alistair Johnson go down and thought, okay, I need another capable guy on the outside defending. He brings in Sam Adekubi as relief. We'll see if Sam gets in versus Mexico or not. But yeah, it was good to see Sam get the call, and we'll see if they can back that up. There might be a hangover for them, but Mexico's not that great these days. I mean, imagine playing again. Both of these games are road games. It's in Dallas, but we know Mexico will be well supported. Dare to dream about back-to-back results against the Americans and the Mexicans in one weekend.
Best team in CONCACAF?
Kings of CONCACAF.
Right?
Could be a real thing. Kings of the NFC West. Week 1 of the NFL, now almost in the rearview mirror. Of course, Monday night are coming up. We'll get to that in Bet365. But, I mean, that was not a spectacular victory for the Seahawks. But to bring in the Mike McDonald era, the Ryan Grubb era, I mean, like, that's okay. I think you're okay with that if you're the Seahawks, aren't you?
Not with the first half. There's so many shots of the coach's box during the broadcast, and Ryan Grubb just shaking his head.
Yeah,
because they just didn't know what was with two safeties. Like, couldn't run the ball, couldn't move the ball, couldn't do anything. Mike McDonald calling defense though. That was good. The defense looked very good. But the defense came as advertised. You knew they were going to be good. You knew the corners going to be great. The pass rush and the defensive line, okay, they were there. But Maffei got to the Bonex a lot. Right. So I think
and apparently they're saying that they barely touched the playbook defensively. That they've got a lot more tricks up their sleeve and a lot more looks to give. So are we back to Legion of Boom 2.0 here? I mean, are we?
I don't know. Like that those Legion of Boom teams like were it was insane. But like, I mean, look, I think that for the Seahawks and the fans watching, obviously I'm a Seahawk guy. First half was terrible, and then second half was, is what you wanted to see. You pound the run, you get the run, you get Kenneth Walker involved, and DK Metcalf really didn't do too much, and then you seal the game on a fourth down with Lockett, a Lockett one-hand catch. Kind of textbook stuff there is what we've seen from the Seahawks.
Yeah, Lockett was pretty good in his old age. He led the receivers, and using Walker is something that Pete Carroll's a little loath to do. Like, he didn't run the ball a lot. The offensive line wasn't very good even in the first half.
For a guy that ran the ball all the time.
Previously, in previous incarnations, I mean, you lose Marshawn Lynch, and speaking of, Marshawn Lynch reared his head on the sideline.
In the best part of the game.
In the middle of the game, Marshawn, not in the background, just cheering them on, right onto the sideline, giving Mike McDonald a shoulder rub.
During the game. And he was there.
Time and place.
He's there, obviously, for doing his stuff, but I think he was there credited as a EA Madden 25 rankings adjuster.
Yes.
So he was there hanging out on the sidelines, which is where you were allowed to be. I'm not entirely sure that close to the coach, but Marshawn's going to do what Marshawn's going to want to do. I don't think anyone's stopping beast mode in Seattle.
Remember, McDonald's a younger guy, so he fanboyed a little bit. He said he was a little bit taken aback.
Yeah. He's like, I was speechless.
Because beast mode was giving him a shoulder rub.
Well, I think he was more speechless. Was like, is this guy catching me during a game?
He forgot what he was doing there for a second, he said. But maybe it was good luck because they turn it around and look at. Hey, they're not going to be a spectacular offensive team. They need to be good enough. And I think they can be good enough. 9-8 last year. Over under for you.
Under.
Yeah, you still going under? Yeah.
Their schedule's not like they should start 2-0, and then you get Miami. So then I think you kind of feel what type of team you are. Got to play the 49ers twice, right? I think the Arizona's, as much as what they showed, I think they're a decent football team. They'll
got
figure
some
it
help
out
from
there.
Detroit though last night.
Yeah, I know, beating the Rams, and I think the Rams are good. I really do. I think the Rams are a very good football team. So they did get some help there, but yeah, I think it's going to be 8 wins for the Hawks this year. I will be happy to be to be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, based on what we saw, I think they're 8, 9, 10. They're in that realm. So that makes the over under of 9 and 8 pretty tough to call because I think it's right there, close to being on the money. Time for the menu presented by Greta Bar YVR 50 West Cordova. Food and drink specials every day. Your place to get set for the game, or if you don't have tickets, watch the game there. Great screens, great atmosphere, and of course the great arcade. So great distractions at half times or intermissions, depending on the sport you're watching. So check it all out. Greta Bar at 50 West Cordova. We have a busy show for you here. Jeff Paterson was our man on the scene at the Jake Milford Golf Tournament. So we'll get his review on what he saw and heard out there at the Jake, and whether or not it bodes well here for the Canucks to start the season. John Shannon, a little wider lens on the National Hockey League and some of the trends we've seen over the course of the summer. We also get into some sports broadcasting news as well, away from the sport of hockey, incidentally, as well. And we'll wrap it all up. The manager, the bench boss of your playoff-bound Vancouver Canadians, Brent Lavallee, joins us to talk about whether or not the Seas can take down another Northwest League title. And it all gets underway tomorrow night at Nat Bailey Stadium. First 2 games are on Nat Bailey soil, CanadiansBaseball.com for tickets. And it's already a great atmosphere at Nat Bailey. We were there on a Tuesday night last week, near the end of the season. Getting a little bit cooler. Still, great crowd. Yeah. A lot of fun to be had. So for playoffs, it's going to be great. And they just have to win the series to win it all. It's as simple as that. So all 3 of those guests coming up here on the show. Time for our best bets, brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price. What do you have? I'm
going to football. I was football all weekend long. I like the Jets. I don't know why. I like Aaron Rodgers coming back. I like him in California. I like him. I like the Jets. I like the Jets against the 49ers on the money line tonight. I was going to take the points, but I like the Jets. They're like plus 170.
What was the spread?
4.5.
Is it really? It's only that?
4.5, yeah.
Wow. Terrible.
4 now. Just moved. It's 4 now.
Are you going to actually watch the game, though?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Oh, 100%. I will watch the Carolina Panthers get destroyed if there's money involved on the game.
I might hate watch it just to be mean to myself. I'm looking at Mexico and Canada tomorrow at Arlington, and there's just Canadian momentum. I'm gonna hedge towards that rather than the hangover of beating the United States, because I don't think they sweated it that much. Like, I don't think it's only a friendly, and they made it look rather easy. So I don't think there is a hangover. I'll take Canada at plus 187 to take down a rather uninspired El Tree squad of late. I don't know if you saw, there was not many fans in attendance, I believe, at the Rose Bowl for their friendly on the weekend for Mexico.
Mexico stinks now.
It's Dallas, though, for this one.
Yeah.
If this is a small crowd, what does it say about the Mexican program?
I don't know. And you even you kind of hear stuff about these young, talented players coming up from different ranks. You're not really hearing that too much about some of the Mexican youth internationals and things like that. So it could be some tough sledding here.
Well, Canada might steal one of them. Santiago Lopez, I believe, isn't it? Canada might steal them rather than going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS. Do we say Canucks season is underway? You know what I mean when I say that. Our man on the scene next. Normally when we talk about Greta Bar YVR, we're telling you to make it a game night at Greta, and we're talking about hockey. Of course, we're not quite yet at hockey season, but game night can mean whatever it means, and that could mean soccer or football game to watch on the screen, or your own games, because the arcade is half the fun at Greta Bar YVR. Make it your game night at 50 West Cordova. And of course, great food and drink specials. And you can also make it a late game night, as they're open late every single night. So make it a late game night, your game night at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Our next guest, as we talk to you from the historic Wall Center, is the one and only Jeff Paterson, a presentation of Mr. Lube. And the Mr. Lube and Tires Change Your Oil, Change Your Wipers event is on now. Visit MrLube.com to download your coupon for a free pair of Goodyear hybrid wiper blades with any oil change, only for a limited time at Mr. Lube, with 18 locations in the Lower Mainland. He's back from the Jake Milford Golf Tournament as the Canucks gathered to officially open up their company season, if you will, if not on the ice just yet, Jeff. And just hearing from them and hearing from some of the key components, it's kind of nice, kind of signals the start of it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is always the unofficial start of the hockey season, if you will, for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, normally it's a week later, but because they're stacking their weeks in Penticton, most of the management group and coaching staff, they're staying in the South Okanagan, so they aren't coming back. So they weren't going to have the tournament in between Young Stars and the start of main camp. So a little earlier than normal. And you were talking about wiper blades there. I was surprised. I needed mine as I pulled into Northview this morning. Now, I think it's going to burn off, and I think they'll have a fine day out there. This is a big event using both of the golf courses on the property. And so it's a big fundraiser for the Canucks and their various charitable arms, and people in a good mood. Optimism abounds at this time of the year in 32 hockey markets. And so you can imagine a fair number of smiles. I'm not sure that the smiles were there when guys were asked to step in front of the microphones, really for the first time this season, but a few of them did it dutifully, and away they go. A day of golf before getting down to the business of really putting the finishing touches on the run-up to training camp.
Captain spoke. We'll get to him in a second, but the big news, I think, is that we heard from Brock Boeser. Got a health update. What'd you take away from what Brock had to say?
Yeah, seemed he's in pretty good spirits. Got a laugh. Somebody asked him how his summer was, and he said, well, I'm at that age where it's a bunch of weddings. And he is. Late 20s. Not his wedding, but friends, I suppose, in the marrying age group. So, it sounded like he had to put on a suit a couple of times, at least, over the course of the summer months to attend some weddings. But other than that, Yeah, I mean, look, I was happy to hear him basically declare himself fit and ready to go here. He was on the ice last week out at UBC. He was among the group there. So that was the first good sign that he was in town early and getting in some of those captain skates. But our first chance to speak to him. And so you played a few of those clips where he talked about, have to taking it easy a little bit there after the blood clotting on blood thinners for some of the summer. But cleared for contact now and has been ramping things up. And so sounds like he's ready to go. And, one of the sort of prevailing thoughts as I left Northview this morning was a lot of these guys, the ones that have been around the core group, if you will, they were asked about coming back to town with expectations really for the first time in their careers, right? You think of the chaos that a lot of these guys have come back to, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was coaching changes, whether it was speculation about coaching changes, whether it was contractual situations for other guys. And of course, Brock has a contractual situation of his own, but they have now put down a baseline of success, getting to the second round of the playoffs. And, this is a little bit different for all of these players that have gone through the slog and seen the dark times and come through it and enjoyed last season. So, a little bit of difference in that regard in terms of what they're entering here as far as the expectations in the market. But look, nobody's got higher expectations than the players themselves. And so Brock talked about building off what he did individually, what they did as a group. Everybody seems to like the additions that the front office has made here in the offseason. And so, it just sounded like some genuine excitement to ramp things up here over the next 10 days.
Yeah, you talked about expectations and, we obviously know Brock and the contract stuff, and we can get into that and obviously our poll question. But Carson Soucy spoke today, Jeff, and he's a guy that you look at and, they brought him in and, he's a guy that we just really haven't seen too much of because he's been injured so much. So what did he have to say? How does he feel? How did his summer go? And kind of as you look forward to him kind of, shoring up that top four on the blue line.
Yeah, and he said right off the hop, like the hope is to stay healthy and be able to play more than he did last year. Now, ultimately, he got the injuries out of the way so that he was there down the stretch and into the playoffs. I mean, this is a guy that experienced some playoff success in that final year of his in Seattle, and then he came north here to Vancouver. So he's been through the grind, hasn't been able to get over the hump of a second round, but the upstart Kraken and their sort of surprise playoff run, he was a part of that. And so, he spoke last year during the playoffs about never having experienced an atmosphere like Rogers Arena. And I think all these guys recognize now sort of what's possible for this group. And I'm not going to sit here and suggest that, anybody's making proclamations about getting to the Stanley Cup final, but I do think that they all think that second round was kind of a nice start to this journey, but where they are in their competitive arc, the age group of a lot of the core guys, including Carson Soucy, who's in his late 20s, they think that they've got the component parts to make some things happen here. So, for Soucy, it's not about flash. That's not his game. It's just about somehow avoiding the injury bug that happened. Remember the final game of the preseason. And so he missed a bunch of time and then got back in the lineup. I think he was back for a dozen games, was out again for 6 weeks, and then really was a fixture for the Vancouver Canucks in the second half of the season. And so he just wants to be available and be there and ready to do his job on a nightly basis. And, that's going to be one of the things to watch at training camp. They know what they've got in Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers. They used them effectively in the playoffs, basically as a shutdown pair, but there are questions about, Quinn Hughes and Phil Hronek. Are they going to split those two? And if so, then there's obviously going to be some fallout. So Soucy may find himself with a different defense pair or partner. And it wouldn't surprise me if they experiment a little bit at training camp. Ultimately, they don't have to make the big decisions until opening night of October the 9th, and we'll see who is healthy and available then. But no, Carson Soucy always in a good frame of mind. Somebody asked him if he was excited to get out and play golf, and he said, I'm always excited to play golf. Sounded like he played a fair bit over the summer months here, but it'll be just about time to put the golf clubs away after the Milford here and pick up the hockey sticks for good and get down to business.
Let's ask you the poll question with Brock speaking, and he didn't have much to add on the contract situation. Where should the Canucks be thinking? Where should they go maximum in terms of term? 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or do they empty it? 7 or 8 year deal, the max that they are allowed to offer them, of course. So what do you think they are thinking, and what should they be thinking?
Well, I think they're in a wait-and-see mode, and I think they've made that abundantly clear over the summer months. The few times that Jim Rutherford or Patrick Elvine have spoken on the record, they've talked about not really being in a rush here. And if you're Brock Boeser, one of the longest-standing, longest-tenured members of the Vancouver Canucks, and you've seen big money doled out to a lot of guys, both core members, but also free agents like Jake DeBrusk. And you have to wonder, is there one more big contract here? Now, Brock also watched as his buddy Bo Horvat was sort of squeezed out of the situation 2 seasons ago. So he knows the business of hockey. Like for the last couple of seasons, his current contract has been a focus. And now here we are in a contract season, the platform year for Brock Boeser, and we'll see where things go. Obviously, you'd love to back up the 40-goal season with another one. If that's the case, then I think the Vancouver Canucks are going to have to recognize his worth and his value to the group here and now. And as an unrestricted free agent, well in advance of his 30th birthday, like there would be a ton of suitors out there if he gets to the open market. Obviously, there are injury issues that he's had to play through. I mean, that's been a part of the Brock Boeser story. He himself talked about needing to prove that the blood clot is going to be behind him here. I tried to ask about the contract, and you're right. He didn't really want to go down that road today other than say he's prepared to sort of play this thing out. But, he on a team that still needs help at the wing position, and they think they've upgraded in the offseason, but we need to see what that looks like once they start playing for keeps. I mean, Brock Boeser is the best goal-scoring winger that they've got. Like, I have trouble wrapping my head around the idea of them having a successful season and then somehow parting with him. I mean, he is a part of what they're trying to put together here. So, it doesn't sound like the Canucks are in any rush to get a deal done here. So I think if you're Brock Boeser, you just got to put your head down, continue to do what you do. And if you back up last year with another one, you're holding all the cards at that point, whether it's here in Vancouver or whether he has to take himself to the open market.
Yeah, the two sides, Jeff, didn't talk really at all this summer, to be completely honest. And I think that, from Brock's point of view, it's okay. Well, let's hope we have a good year. Let's build on last year, and then let's see what happens. I mean, we've seen in the NHL 20 goal scorers get paid, 25 goal scorers get paid. You scored north of 30, you're going to be making bank. And Brock's a 40-goal scorer now in the National Hockey League. So my question to you, I guess, now is, what's a successful season for a guy that's come off 40 goals now in a contract year? We've seen players elevate their games in all sorts of different teams, especially when it's contract year. But is it that 30, 35 plateau? Like, do we have to expect that for Brock Boeser?
I think yes. Like, This is a guy that had never been a 30-goal scorer, got to 40 last year. It was incredible. But let's be honest, everything broke his way. 4 on opening night. That was the springboard to a 40-goal season. The other part of the Brock Boeser equation was he played every game up until game 82 of the regular season in Winnipeg when they left him behind on that road trip. And, in order to be a 40-goal scorer, you got to play the bulk of the games, obviously. And so, it was a career high in goals, but it was also a career high in games played for Brock Boeser. And again, there have been a number of seasons that have been cut short by injury. And ultimately, game 7 of that Edmonton series, he was unavailable, which was unfortunate for him and the hockey club. But that's why he talked about hopefully putting that in the past now and having this clean bill of health. But I think when you get to 40, and I'm not going to sit here and say that he's got to now be a 40-goal scorer for the next bunch of seasons, there's variance involved, right? He got a lot of bounces. He does. He scores in bunches. We saw that. I think he had a 4-goal game and 2 hat tricks last year, among his goal scoring exploits and a bunch of 2-goal games. That's what he does. He's shown that over his career that he's a guy that scores in bunches. So will he score in as many bunches this year? Time's going to tell on that one. But I think when you get to 40, 30, absolutely. Anything short of 30 would be disappointing, especially in a platform year like this where he's going to try to negotiate. He'd love to have negotiated off the 40-goal season. It didn't quite work that way for him. But yeah, I look at him like I think it's okay to think that there might be a little bit of a step back, but we've seen him round out his game, address some areas of weakness, become a far more complete player. And I think one of the things that was really impressive about his season last year was all of the goals that he scored as a net front presence, whether it was tips and deflections and rebounds. Those weren't goals that he scored earlier in his career. He was a guy that get the puck on his stick with time and space, and he could beat goalies cleanly. He still has that ability, but he also showed a willingness last year to get to the tough areas of the ice and became a really strong net front presence. And, he was the leading goal scorer on the power play. I think that he and the hockey club would love to see that continue. But I also think that they think that, bringing in Jake DeBrusk, there's probably another guy that's going to want the puck in the power play. Elias Paterson, JT Miller. Quinn Hughes was talking this morning again about, setting the bar at 20 as a bare minimum for him. And, one way for him to improve his output would be to score a few more on the power play as well. So looking forward to seeing what the Canucks do on the power play, the setups, the formations. Where does Brock Boeser ultimately fit best, and where is he most effective there? But I think if we have this conversation at season's end, guys, if Brock Boeser isn't a 30-goal scorer, that would be a disappointment.
Do you think that the team as is constructed right now supports his continuing to be a 30-goal scorer at the very least? Just that there are more options to, with the tide coming into, all ships rise here, and he's not relied upon to be fast. He's not fast, we know that, but if the rest of his team can be faster, does that help the longevity here of Brock Boeser?
I think what helps him the most is the fact that he seems like he's in lockstep with JT Miller. And if you're a winger if you're on JT Miller's wing, you're going to play a lot. You're going to play in key situations. You're probably going to see some tough matchups as they did in the playoffs, but they also showed an ability to overcome and win their share of the battles. And so he and JT have found a rhythm. I don't know if I can expect that JT's going to have another 100-point season, but JT's in the prime of his career, and he's going to have a big year if he stays healthy. That's just who he is and what he is to the Vancouver Canucks. I think that tandem. Now, who's the other winger there? I think we'll get our first hint at training camp. I know last week out at UBC, take it for what it's worth, but Daniel Sprong was taking some shifts with those guys. I'm not going to read too much into the informal skates 2 weeks before training camp, but somebody had to play on their wing, and sounded like Daniel Sprong was the guy that was taking the turn there. One of the things that I'm curious about, I didn't get a chance to ask Brock today, but somewhere along the line here before camp is through, if he has a season like he did last year, and remember at Christmas time, only Austin Matthews had scored more goals in the National Hockey League than Brock Boeser. If he gets off to that kind of start again, USA Hockey they're not going to be able to ignore those sorts of exploits. I have seen a few mock lineups for the Four Nations face-off that have Brock Boeser on that American team, but I've also seen a bunch that don't. I think he is a guy that's on the bubble, and the USA has so much talent right now to choose from. As I sit here right now, I think there's probably some work to be done for Brock Boeser to make that Four Nations face-off team. But if he has the kind of start that he did last year, and, it's not a flash in the pan, I'm not talking about opening night and 4 goals, but I'm talking about those first 3 months of the season, I wonder how much of that is motivation for Brock Boeser to be included in, a best-on-best tournament, to get an opportunity to represent his country, something that he hasn't done since the World Junior days. So it's been a little while. Is that in the back of his mind? Again, I didn't get a chance to ask him that, but I am curious to see if that's motivation in any way for Brock Boeser as this season unfolds.
Remember, didn't Chris Kunitz get to go with Sidney Crosby?
Mm-hmm.
And if Brock Boeser has any sort of chemistry with JT Miller, he's a guy that's circled there. Jeff, everything is on paper right now. When you look at the National Hockey League, 32 teams, we can sit here and talk about it until they start playing these preseason games and going into training camps. So let me ask you an on-paper question. How much better, do you think, are the Canucks right now on paper than they were the way they finished last season?
I do think that they've got more scoring options on the wings.
Yep.
I like the signing of Jake DeBrusk. Again, at the time on July 1st, if you're going to roll the dice on an unrestricted free agent, why not do it one of the youngest guys in the free agent class? So, DeBrusk talked today about seeing room for improvement and didn't want to go public with his goals, but he said that he does sort of set monthly goals for himself, and he wanted to make sure that the first month was a good one and follow up from there. But, twice a 27-goal scorer. And in both of those years, guys, his season wasn't anywhere close to 82 games. He was injured in both of them. Like, he was more on a pace for somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 in those seasons. So I think, over the balance of a lengthy contract, I certainly hope there were a couple of 30-goal seasons for Jake DeBrusk. And then, you go from there. Daniel Sprong, where does he ultimately fit best? I think that's going to be determined. Danton Heinen, just a guy that kind of quietly goes about his business, but has a little bit of offensive flair there. And I'm curious to see what Kiefer Sherwood can do and what role ultimately. I mean, goal scoring isn't going to be his primary role, but this is a guy that not that long ago put up 75 points in the American Hockey League. Like, there is some offense in his game, and we'll see how he's best utilized. So, I think wing options and speed, those were two things that they wanted to address, and they did. But in saying that, Irv, like, I think it's quite conceivable that the Vancouver Canucks take a step back from 50 wins and 109 points, but are a more complete team and are firing on all cylinders when the playoffs roll around, where last year we know the Elias Paterson storyline that went hand in hand with a power play that, from the All-Star break was, I think, 24th or 25th in the league by percentage. So, I think I could paint you a picture where maybe they take a step back in their wins and their point totals, but that final month of the season is about arriving at the playoffs, hitting your stride, and a power play that is a weapon as it was earlier in the season, and all of your top guns are going. And these guys now have the experience of 2 playoff rounds and some of the drama there and ability to win in Nashville and win in Edmonton and close games and overtime. And, how do they put that to use when the playoffs roll around again? So I think there are ways that they can be improved, but it may not show in their regular season win-loss total.
Quinn Hughes was out there. Anything stand out from the captain?
No, just that I think he now really is comfortable in his role, not just as the captain of the Vancouver Canucks, but as a face of the National Hockey League. And you saw that with the cover of, NHL 25 and the fact that he was one of the first 6 rolled out for Team USA for that. He understands, this is who he is. And by doing the things that he does, these opportunities come along. He'll represent the Canucks down in Vegas this week at the North American Media Tour. He's done that before, and he said it's an honor. And he recognizes that, these opportunities won't last for 20 and 50 years. People won't be asking for Quinn Hughes, forever, but they are right now because he is one of the best players in the National Hockey League, and he seems really comfortable in all of that. And so, it seemed like he was in a pretty good headspace, arrived here in town over the weekend, has been working hard with his dad and his brothers back in Michigan. And I think he'll be ready to go. One of the things that jumped out at me was he was asked about backing up his Norris, and he said it really isn't about winning the Norris. That's not the goal. The goal is to have the same kind of season that voters just can't deny that, he is one of, if not the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. So it's all about the process for him. He's a very calculated guy. He does think that there is more to give, and I'm really curious to see what that looks like for a guy that's coming off a 92-point season, but I'm here for it if there's still room for growth. To me, it's more about, again, getting to that high level that he has established and then keeping it there over the course of a season. He talked about, some of the takeaways from being a target in the playoffs. He's so good that teams are going to have to game plan for him, but I don't think he's going to get the same sort of attention in game 16 and game, 47 that he did in a 7-game playoff series. But there's no question when teams are coming into Vancouver or they're facing the Canucks that Quinn Hughes is circled on the whiteboard because as he goes, so goes this hockey club. So just another year of really good experiences for Quinn Hughes. And he did talk about how excited he is about this Four Nations face-off. If people wonder if there's going to be buy-in, absolutely. At the outset here in September, he said he can't wait to get, be a part of a best-on-best tournament like that one.
And did the goalies arrive in a Pope mobile so that nobody could get at them and that they would be safe and sound?
You know what? No sign of anybody that plays that position. I saw Elias Paterson. I saw Tyler Myers and Connor Garland. JT Miller kind of gave us a nod as he did a flyby. Didn't do media today, but the Stars were out in force, but no sign of Thatcher Demko. So no real update there. And I don't know if that means that he's not there and involved or, I was there early in the morning. They don't tee off until afternoon. So maybe he was among the late arrivals, but no sign of Thatcher Demko in the early wave of Vancouver Canucks that were on the ground at Northview.
Anything else for him?
No, I think we're good.
We're good. Jeff, you're good too. Thank you for this. Appreciate it. We'll hear more from the Canucks tomorrow as we disseminate the audio from today, but we thank you for your contributions for this one, and we'll talk to you down the road.
All right, guys. Sounds good. Thanks.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the net. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com. Our next guest, the longtime executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada and now free agent that we claim as our own, John Shannon, joins us once again here on Sekeres and Price. Can you just be ours? Can we just go from Sekeres and Price, John Shannon? How about that?
Hey, listen, if the check's big enough, you can do anything you want.
You know that ain't the case here.
No, I know.
That's the wrong place for that, sir. Hey, we've got some broadcasting notes here. So
Sure.
we'll start there before we get to our poll question on the Canucks and stuff. We do have some broadcasting notes on a couple of fronts. I'll start with Scott Russell, who signed off from the Paralympics, and say goodbye. We knew this wasn't a surprise, but we knew this was going to happen. He's 66 years of age. Much like Brian Williams before him, it's just been omnipresent at these sorts of events. He could have gone deeper if he wanted to. I mean, I think he's in decent health, right, John? At 66, I mean, a lot of guys in his position that have these plum spots, I mean, they push it as far as they can. Why do you think he stopped here at 66?
I don't really know, other than he's actually moving into the education world as a chancellor of a small university here in Ontario.
Wow,
So
okay.
you get a good offer to think about moving, and you have less pressure. And you can ease into what I would describe as semi-retirement, then you consider doing it. Scott was with us and with me for a long time at Hockey Night, and people in the West would remember Scott was, and I've never forgotten this. My mother, who, when she was alive, always talked about Russell, Cuthbert, and Millen, and Kelly Rudy as her boys. And that was the Western crew for Hockey Night for so many years in the 1990s. And Scott was a big part of that. And, I think that there was a realization at some point in Scott's life that he was never going to be the regular host of Hockey Night. Ron was going to be there for a long time. And when Brian left for CTV, it gave Scott an opportunity when the Olympics came back to carve out his own niche. And that's exactly what he did at the CBC, and did it so well. No one's more passionate about good television than Scott. And then he really got to reinvigorate his passion for amateur sports. And he fit in perfectly to what the CBC stood for over the last 15 years. And, you're right. Every second year, whether it be winter games or summer games, he did a marvelous job as the primetime host, as the face of the Olympics, just like Brian was for so many years. So any accolades he receives are well-deserved. And I can tell you one thing, and sometimes you don't necessarily see it, but Scott is a very passionate guy. And once he decided that the Olympics and amateur sports were going to be his focal point, he lived and died with them. And the viewer was really the winner of that, because he did such a marvelous job.
And people might have he might have been a little hidden in that he was doing a lot of the streaming stuff on CBC. It wasn't just that he was just doing these games. I think he was on Gem and such on the weekends doing a lot of the amateur sport that, unless you are a fan of downhill skiing or track and field, those fans seek it out, but it's not in your face on your TV guide per se, but he was still working on a weekly basis there for CBC.
He, doing the Olympics, if you have a regular occurring show like they did, the CBC did, it's a lifestyle. Because with all the sports that are involved, and Saturday afternoons, you're right, either on Gem or on the main network, there was always something that Scott was hosting. He and Andy were always doing that together for the most part. So from that perspective, he didn't disappear. He just changed his address, and did a marvelous job doing it.
John, let's kind of move forward here a little bit and talk about, the Vancouver Canucks, and they're now into their Jake Milford golf tournament, which is today, which is the unofficial kickoff to the season. A lot of talk around the team, obviously, about Demko. We'll get into that as well. But Brock Boeser, our poll question here today is, what should a contract extension, what should a term for a contract extension look like for Brock Boeser? 4 years, 5, 6, or 7 to 8?
Well, if I guess if you're the player,
Yeah.
it's one number, and if you're the team, it's another. My number's 4.
Okay.
I'm a 4-year guy. I not necessarily in hockey, but Paul Beeston always had this attitude: never sign a baseball player to more than 5 years for a very good reason. And I think if you can hold true to that in hockey, you're probably doing the right thing. 4 years is a long time in the National Hockey League. You guys both know that. The wear and tear. Boeser, let's face it, has reinvigorated himself one more time for the Canucks. So if there was a way to get him to a 4-year deal, if you needed to compromise to get to a 5th year, then do it. But to me, a 4-year deal, at what number, Irf? What would you say the number is? Is it 7? Is it more? What are you thinking about?
I think it's going to be at least the number has to start with an 8. If it was a long-term deal, the number, I think at a 7-year, 8-year deal, $50 million would have to be the bare minimum. I don't think that there's been talks. I think it's been pretty quiet over the summer between the two sides. I think the most important thing, John, is when we look at it, is that he's healthy, right? You know, he had the blood clot issue. He had all of that, and he's by all accounts, he's healthy and he's ready to go. So if you're the player, I think when you look at the negotiations here, it's like, okay, well, we'll wait and see. But I mean, John, you know, Jim Rutherford in that camp, what if they wait and see too long and this guy ends up with 25, 30 goals here in the regular season?
It does beg the question: is what is a 30-goal scorer worth in the National Hockey League? And man, oh man,
it's changing, right? Because the
time,
it's going to go up. An $8 million player might end up being a pretty average player in 3-4 years' time.
Wow, that's an amazing thing. I mean, now we're talking, NHL numbers, which pale in comparison to NFL numbers, but
right. Or NBA,
yeah, but at the same time, when you're still working on such a low cap number compared to other leagues, and when you're talking about a new contract when it comes into play, we're going to assume, I think, from now on that there's going to be an escalator every year of $5 million at least. So we're talking $100 million cap within 2.5 years, then that might make some sense. So that's really the challenge. Hopefully we don't have any more years where the cap just goes flat, and we can get to that 3-figure cap number. And that would allow, I think, a lot more players to justify those numbers. 8 years for Brock Boeser. I'm sorry, 8 years for Brock Boeser. I just don't see it. I really don't see it. That's all. And probably because of the way Boeser plays the game too. When was the last time he played 82 regular season games?
I think he had a surprisingly good run up until the blood clot, but he does certainly have a reputation to live down.
Right.
74 and 71 in the last 2 years, so decent years in terms of reliability, but he's still missing games.
And you're right about the blood clot. Has it cleared up? Yes. Is he healthy? Yes. I would assume that he's going to be on medication for the rest of his playing career. Which would then, does that create a little bit of a dilemma for the hockey club as well? That's going to be an interesting discussion. What you hope in this situation, you just hope it doesn't become a distraction for the year, and they find one way or the other to get it settled quickly.
I mean, if I'm Brock Boeser, I'm asking for, if they come at me with 4, I'm pushing 2 back their direction then, because I want a long-term deal before I retire if I'm Brock Boeser. No, I mean, if they're not willing to go long-term with me now, then I'll stick around and see if they can win here in the next couple of years. I mean, that would be a 2-year contract extension. So that'd be 3 more years of Boeser. Mm-hmm. And then at the age of 30, 31, he gets to sign wherever the hell he pleases.
Interesting. I think there are times that we assume guys like Boeser are older than they truly are.
Yeah.
And he's been around a long time. He's been around a lot longer than people realize. So from that perspective, if you can, when you start to sign contracts and you get guys into the 33, 34 years of age, this, for so many reasons, not necessary ability, but for budgetary reasons, this has become a young man's sport. guys on controllable contracts early in their careers. That's a real challenge. So that to me is an interesting part of this too.
I had somebody ask me the other day about offer sheets, and we're a little bit past the Oilers news. It's not newsy, but when you do go back now and look at the last few summers, there's been a couple of offer sheet news items here. Does it start to get normalized? Do we see one per year maybe for in offer sheets? How much did this one scandalize the managers groups?
Well, I think managers always wonder about offer sheets, and does this open the floodgates? Not necessarily, but I think you have to now look at guys of the ilk of Broberg and Holloway that are coming out of really their first contracts, proving that they belong. And it goes back to something I think we talked about when the offer sheets came out, is the penalties for signing these guys right now under this CBA are minor, minor compared to what they truly are. You're getting Broberg, who's a first round pick, a second round pick, and a third. And I think that there'll be more. I really do. I think they will be more. I really do think there'll be more. Particularly when you're looking at teams trying to bulk up and do more things earlier in a rebuild. And that's exactly what Doug Armstrong did. And I fully expect lots of managers are going to look at this, particularly if they have cap space, and say, hey, listen, this might expedite our rebuild, and there's going to be pressure from owners to expedite the rebuild as well.
Well, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Pressures from owners too, John. But to go back to what you mentioned before, guys on entry-level contracts, you have superstar players coming in with entry-level deals and guys that you're going to have to sign to these massive numbers. Why not throw an offer sheet someone's way that you're willing to give up a second-round pick for? Who knows if that pick's going to even pan out? Like, I think that you should see more creative ways for some of these NHL GMs to go and work. And I think that that's kind of the direction that most of these things will happen. So I agree with you. I really do believe that you're going to see a lot more here as the years go on.
Totally. It until they renegotiate and make it more punitive than it is right now, I think we're going to see a lot more of this stuff. And I wonder what kind of negotiation that will be between the Players Association and the league. Say, okay, these offer sheets, we like them. They prove that the CBA is working. It's one of those things where you can't complain about where restricted free agency exists. So do we really want to put it and make more of a penalty for a team that signs these guys? And that will be a fascinating negotiation between the PA and Mr. Bettman.
Pat Quinn to Lanny McDonald to Mike Gartner is the faces of the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee. What do you think of the choice as he takes over?
It makes sense. It's almost part of a lineage. Mike has been actively involved with the Hall for a long period of time, whether it be on the selection committee or be around. Mike is, with his role as a player, with his role with the Players Association, someone has a passion for the game and for the history of the game, as Mike does. I know Mike well. He's one of those guys that, quite frankly, is a true gentleman of the game and will give everybody a thought process to understand. I'm not sure any of the rules will change, guys. I'm not sure we're going to see more transparency with Paul. We might see more of the same. This is I guess the best way to describe it, this is a conservative appointment for a conservative position.
Yeah, it certainly feels like that. Before you go, we were giving our reviews of Tom Brady's debut on television. Some guys get into that seat and you just think, wow, born to do it, born to explain the game and whatever sport we're talking about. Ferraro on a hockey game, early Romo on football. It was not natural for Tom Brady. Is that fair?
True. To me, three things. First of all, I never realized how and this is, I'm going to be one of the critical guys. I never realized how nasally his voice was until I heard him without being on camera. Because when you're on camera, you can get away with a more nasally voice. The second thing is that Tom Brady has, for the longest time, been the greatest sports speaker of all time. Talk for 20 seconds, say nothing.
Right.
So now he's having to learn how to talk for 20 seconds and say something. So that's totally contradictory to what he has been. And the other one to me is, in going through lots of broadcast websites this morning and newspapers in the United States, nobody wants to really, in mainstream, nobody really wants to be critical of Tom. So if it was you or Irf or me, Blake, it would be, these guys are brutal. Tom Brady it's a work in progress. Tom Brady he'll get better. Not bad, he was bad. Now, social media was not really fair to Brady in so many ways. I just find that people in positions of power are giving Tom the benefit of the doubt, which I guess you can do when you sign $370 million for 10 years.
That's what I was going to say. That deal is insane.
Yeah, it's a lot of dough.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw this with Torts. Remember, Torts on TSN was not very good. And he's the opposite, John. Torts is used to saying something. And then he got on TV and started saying nothing. And you know, like, you just never know how these guys are going to react when the lights turn on.
Yeah, he's you know, once you're inside the bubble of being in a professional sport, you have a difficult time knowing when to be critical,
right,
and how to be critical. And he has to learn that. Matt Ryan, I don't know if you saw Matt Ryan on CBS.
Yeah, I did.
Matt Ryan's trying to be more critical. Last year he wasn't. This year he is. So I like not everybody's Boomer Esiason and Phil Simms when it comes to being, you know, straight to the fact. Whether you like Esiason or Simms when they were on at all, at least they gave you the goods. You may not have agreed with them. At least they give you the goods.
Sorry, one more question. Do you think that maybe it was better suited for him to be an analyst like Matt Ryan was, as opposed to being the color guy for a game? Do you think it's because it's two completely different things, right?
Yeah. They needed to find somebody to mirror Romo. They needed to find somebody to mirror Aikman. Mm-hmm. So you needed to put Brady on that stage. I think that was the only way to justify the money too. You know, that to me is part of it. Tom's just got to learn to be. Listen, we know he's passionate about the sport. We know he's critical of his teammates. You've seen him yell at them on the sidelines. He just has to learn and find a way to be passionate on the air. I suspect it will come. It's a work in progress, boys.
I think on the sidelines he was just always saying, "Why aren't you as good as me?" And he can't.
He was allowed to.
He can't say that on the TV all the time. Why aren't they as good?
By the way, what we are going to see a lot more of, and this is something I noticed yesterday, we are going to see a lot more on-camera shots from the booth as long as Brady's on.
That's true too. Yeah.
And then what you're going to see is all the other networks are going to start doing it too all the time. Yeah. So, you know, the over-under now is how many on cameras for a game that Brady is the analyst. The over-under is going to be 10.
My favorite part about calling games on Apple TV, no shots of the broadcast booth.
That means you can wear that ugly shirt.
That's right.
And shorts and flip-flops.
Completely. Yeah, absolutely. John, thanks for this. Appreciate it. Sean. We'll talk to you next week here, and the hockey season is upon us.
Have a good week, boy.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com. Our next guest has just finished his third straight winning season as manager of the Vancouver Canadians, and they are off to the playoffs. Game 1 versus Spokane at 7:05 at Nat Bailey Stadium tomorrow. That's Tuesday. Game 1 and 2 at the Nat. Brent Lavallee, the Pride of Delta, joins us once again here on Sick Harrison Price. Brent, congratulations on another march into the playoffs. How's it feel?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, and thanks for having me. And it feels great. It's what we came out here and set out to do from spring training. And, the work the guys put in starts at this time last year, once the season ended. So this is a nice way to celebrate and get to compete at the biggest scale for these guys to show off their work and what they're becoming as prospects and future Blue Jays.
We kind of joke that, during the season, people may or may not know the score. They just love the atmosphere. It kind of changes in the playoffs. People come out there to watch you win. Do you feel a little bit more pressure come playoff time?
Yeah. I mean, we like to send the fans home happy. We understand we can't do it every day over our 70 or 67 home games, but when you get that type of support, you really like to send your fans home happy, and then that way they keep coming back, and hopefully they're out there strong for us on Tuesday and Wednesday, because this is a talented team we're taking on, and need all the help we can get from the Vancouver fans.
Brent, what do you attribute the team's success to this season as you head into the postseason here?
Well, we've got great players. We've got tremendous staff. The Blue Jays in general are a terrific organization, and just our process from, like I mentioned before, like from when these guys start their off-season camps all the way until the strength and conditioning phases that they're entering right now. It's no mistake that these guys are playing their best at this moment. They've been prepared for it. They're hungry. And I think, without using the word culture too much, it's just part of our culture. We like to work hard, play hard, and play in these type of games at this time of year.
Is there anything that, when you go and look at your team, obviously now heading into the postseason here, that surprised you this season, or maybe something that you didn't know about any of your players heading into this year?
Yeah, there was a lot of unknowns, because we kept our team last year all the way down to the end. So this team was pretty much a bunch of guys that we hadn't seen before. Yeah. So we had to learn them really quick in spring training, and that's tough to do because guys are kind of everywhere in the org during spring training. So no real surprises. The biggest thing more is like how they adjust to their first full season. A lot of the guys we have this year were drafted last year in July, and played about a month and a half in Dunedin, and then made the jump this year. So the surprise was just how well we've sustained playing this well for this long in their first full season, because it is a real grind and a real challenge to play 132 games plus spring training plus your camps in the preseason. So the only surprise is how well our guys have handled it, how well our staff has handled it. We have a few staff that are first-time full season members as well. So it's not easy, but also kind of not surprised, just because of our process and the way that we handle all these things.
It seemed like there was a bit of a speed wobble at the end of August. I think you were 4-6 your last 10 games of August, but you came around, won the final series. Did you feel like anything that was sort of nagging at the end of August has been righted here, and you guys are ready for game one?
Yeah, and we jumped out to an early start there, a great early start in the second half. And once you do that, and there's only one spot available for playoffs, you got a target on you. So we got, and thankfully we got everyone's best. And that series down in Hillsborough to end August was a tough one. But honestly, it sharpens you up for a series like last week where you need to win, and a series like this upcoming one. And every team in this league's tough. So, there's no real week you go into thinking that, hey, we're going to go 5-1, 6-0. Like, it's going to be a fight to go 500 every week. And, you just hope that you play better than the other team in a couple innings and, come out on top. But yeah, we've been getting everyone's best for, it seems like 8 weeks now. So, looking forward to one more week of really good competition and showcasing what these guys have worked so hard for.
And the odd, bomb through the stratosphere. Was it Nick Goodwin who went over the porch and left there the other day? We were there last Tuesday. Who was it that went out of the stadium over the porch and left?
Adrian Pinto would have hit a car back there behind left field. Because I didn't hear it hit the neutral zone, but it definitely would have hit something. It was,
honestly, it's the biggest home run I've ever seen at that stadium. Maybe you've seen a few over that porch, but I hadn't, and that was something else. So
yeah. You speak about Nick Goodwin. Nick hit one in game 4 of the playoffs last year that went equally as far, and that pretty much sealed the championship last year. But yeah, Pinto was the guy this week, and Yeah, we've seen a few bolts. We got some guys in our lineup right now that are swinging it really well. So we might see and hear a few more of those this weekend or this week.
Lot of excitement, and being a local guy, you know what this team means to the community. So keep it up, Brent. Good luck. We'll be out there cheering at Nat Bailey Stadium. Hopefully everybody else will too. We know it'll be sold out, so get your tickets now at CanadiansBaseball.com. Brent Lavallee, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.